my body gave in, and I then was unable to walk from my waist down. I just couldn't move a thing.
Welcome back to Other People's Lives. I'm Joe Santagato.
I'm Greg Dybec.
For anyone out there that would like to be a part of the show, don't hesitate to reach out to us. You can reach us at our email, oplpodcast@gmail.com, or go to our website, oplshow.com, and send us an email through there.
And if you want to support the show while getting bonus episodes, you can head over to patreon.com/OPL show. It's just $5 a month. You get weekly behind the scenes episodes. You get conversations with guests that will never appear on this main channel. You get access to our Discord chat to talk with us, other listeners, and previous guests that we bring into the chat. And you will be part of our Helping Other People initiative, where you can help us decide what to do with a portion of our patron funds every single month to donate to a charity or come up with some sort of creative charitable venture. And you can head over to patreon.com/OPL show to be part of that. And today we're going to be speaking with an anorexia survivor who had an intense battle with the illness and a long journey to recovery. And, I think it's important to note, especially on this show, if you've been listening for a while, way back in one of our earliest seasons, we spoke with a guest who was pro-anorexia. It was for sure the most controversial episode that we've done. It was one of the hardest episodes to host, honestly. If you've listened to that episode, it was hard not to judge. Clearly something that Joe and myself did not agree with. And I think it's important that we make it clear through this platform that anorexia it's not a lifestyle, it's an illness, it's a disease. And we are happy to be able to have today's guest on to walk us through her experience and ultimately her steps to recovery. So thank you for being on the show today.
Hi.
Hey, so to just kick it off, can you just kind of define anorexia for us and all the listeners?
Yeah, well, it's exactly what you said, to be honest. It's not a lifestyle. For me, it's not only a life-threatening disease, but it is a life-destroying disease, not only for the actual person that has it, but for their family as well. The impact that it had on my family is just, phenomenal. And my dad, for example, he still can't talk about it without tearing up. I was his daughter at the end of the day, going through a really, really tough time. But I just can't stress enough how much I feel. Well, I know that it's not a lifestyle, it's not a choice. I didn't know what was going on, but it is a life-threatening disease and illness.
Can you kind of tell us about, in the beginning, kind of like when you started struggling with this and what kind of effects it was having on you?
Yeah, well, I didn't, that's the thing, like, you don't actually, I didn't realize there was anything wrong. I had no idea. I was completely oblivious. I used to dance, and I remember my dance teacher, we basically were doing a show, and my dance teacher just made a comment like, you all need to get into the best shape of your life. And that sort of, I don't know why, but it stuck. And I sort of started cutting out food. So not anything drastic. It was literally just like not eating chocolate and crisps, that sort of thing. And then it just expanded from there. I was only 12 when I was referred to the eating disorder clinic. And I would go to school, and I started not having lunch, that sort of thing, changing my breakfast, thinking, okay, well, my parents, they've given me pocket money, but they're not going to know if I don't have lunch, that sort of thing. And then it just got extremely excessive to the point where I would know the calories in absolutely everything. I would only eat certain things, even to the point of, I don't know, knowing that this one chicken sandwich from Tesco's had like 273 calories and I wouldn't touch a different one, that sort of thing. But I didn't realize that there was anything actually wrong. I just wanted to get in the best shape possible. Then it was my mum that noticed it, because when you're sort of so malnourished, you get like a layer of down on your skin because your body can't keep warm. So my parents would have noticed that I would be absolutely freezing and I'd have to sort of wear a scarf. I was getting like a layer of down over my body, and would have to have like 2 duvets, a heated blanket underneath like on top of the mattress, sorry. And yeah, that's when my mum realised that I lost quite a lot of weight. So she took me to the eating disorder clinic. And no, actually, sorry, she took me to the GP first, who then said, oh yeah, she has lost a dramatic amount of weight. Then they referred me to the eating disorder clinic, and I was told to have these, I don't know if you've, I don't know what your guys' equivalent are, but sort of like a protein shake, but one with like loads of calories in it. So they wanted to drink those shakes to put on weight.
Yeah, just those like nutrition packed, like calorie packed sort of drinks.
Yeah, they'd give you like different flavors and stuff to make them more appealing. But
can I ask though, when you went into this, do you know about how much weight you lost?
So when I was referred to the clinic by the GP, I was around 89 pounds. Then when I was actually hospitalised, so this was early Jan 2006, I was about 89 pounds, and that was because my parents had noticed I'd lost a large amount of weight. I never had, and also that's another thing, like I never had issues with food when I was younger, and that's another thing that people have the misconception with, that you've always had an issue with food, you've had a really bad upbringing. I didn't at all. I've got the most amazing parents. I went to a grammar school. It was actually when I was in year 7. I don't know what your equivalent is, but it's like the first year of secondary school when this all started happening. But there was nothing that I could say that triggered it apart from that. That's the only that I can remember, that my dance teacher saying that. That's the only thing that I can think of, and it just stuck in my head.
And then it just became habit at that point, like really just, I guess, that first trigger of her saying get in the best shape, and then just, I guess, obsessiveness over like calorie intake and things like that. And did you start immediately kind of noticing a change in your body that you at first thought was positive?
I remember, so even though I was only 12, I was like quite a good dancer, and I would often sort of host the classes for my teacher, things like that. And I do remember one time that I wore like a crop top and some trousers, and like dance trousers, and I felt, I guess, comfortable. I felt like a bit like, oh, okay, like this is paid off a little bit. But then it just, my mum used to have to take in my dance trousers, like regularly, because they were just getting so big and they didn't do like a different size. But even then, I never thought I'm too thin. And it was never, again, this is a misconception that it's all about looking in the mirror and being like, oh, I look great today. It's not that. I used to wear baggy clothes. When I used to shower, I used to cover the shower mirror with a towel because I didn't want to see myself. It was nothing to do with that. It's just, my dad referred to it as another person. So when I requested my medical notes, there was one thing that really shocked me, which was like violent behaviour and things like that. I never realised, because I was so small, I got to, when I was hospitalised, I was 60 pounds. So that's, UK 4.3 stone.
Wow.
And
how tall were you?
I was about the same, so it was like 1 meter 52. So I'm not sure. I'm about 5. I don't think I've grown that much since then, to be honest. I'm like 5'6".
Okay.
I don't know what the equivalent is. So 5'6".
Well then,
okay.
Yeah, regardless, 60 pounds is obviously very light.
Yeah, it's very, very small. But yeah, so it was also excessive exercising. That's again what took over. When I was at school, I wouldn't spend any time with my friends. I would literally walk around the school trying to just burn calories. And I remember once somebody said, and I heard them, oh, look, there's that anorexic girl. And it was such a shock to me because I didn't know I had that, if that makes sense. And just burst into tears, just like, oh my God, I can't believe someone thinks that I've got that, because I was just completely in denial about it, I guess. And I didn't know what was going on. I just knew that it's really, really hard to explain. There was just there's something in your head which makes you think what you've done is not enough, and you feel guilty. You'd like, right, this is the best way I can explain it. So say if you go swimming and you do, I don't know, 10 lengths, and then the next time you go swimming you try and do 12 lengths, because you're like, well, I did 10 before, so surely I can do 12 this time. And it just continues like that, where so it's like, oh, okay, well, I only had half an apple yesterday, so why would I need to have more today because I only had half an apple yesterday? Does that make sense?
It does make a lot of sense. Like, I think where my mind's going, I guess, to form some sort of relation is like exercise. Like, I know me and Joe talk about this a lot. It's almost like goal setting to the point that it becomes dangerous of, when does something stop? I ran 10 miles last week, 12 miles, 15 miles. Like, now I'm running and I'm hurt, I'm injuring myself, but I have to hit this goal, or I have to keep up this progress to the point that it's not even healthy anymore. It's just an obsession to sort of reach another goal or do something better, than I did last time, if that makes sense.
Yeah, literally hit the nail on the head. It's a complete obsession, and I wouldn't sit down. So I think a lot of people have got the impression that eating late is bad for you. It sort of sits on you. And I think that's where my obsession came from in that regard. I wouldn't eat past a certain time. And then it started growing to, okay, you can't sit down until this time. So again, an obsession of, if I went to sit down at 7:30, I'd be like, well, I was stood up until 8 p.m. yesterday, so I need to do that today. Wow. Or I would make up reasons to walk to, my granny used to live down the road, and I remember doing this. I don't know why I did it now, but I would make up reasons that I would have to walk to hers just to burn those extra calories.
Yeah, and
so you were keeping track of how far you were walking or how many calories you were burning, or you just were making sure, like, I need to be standing for a certain amount of time today?
Yeah, I didn't keep track, but I started doing things like I would start walking to school instead and doing extra classes after school, like sports classes, which I didn't even enjoy. Do you know what I mean? I don't even like sport, really.
And you were 12 at this time?
Yeah, I was 12. So I'm 27 now. And yeah, I was 12 when I was hospitalised. And again, so I was about 70 pounds when they were like, right, we might have to admit her. I said it to my parents. And then it was like a couple of days later, after they've said, like, she's showing really abnormal behaviour, because your brain, if you're, like I said, if you're so malnourished, you don't function properly. Your brain doesn't work properly. And that's when they hospitalised me. And I remember I was at the eating disorder clinic, and my dad, my mum and my dad would drive me there a couple of times a week, and they would say, like, look, if you lose any more weight, you're going to have a tube in. And I was like, well, if I don't let you put a tube in, how are you going to do it? Do you know what I mean? So I was sort of in denial, like, well, I'm saying no, so I'm not having one. And then, yeah, the day that I actually got hospitalised, my mum and dad got a suitcase out the back of the car, and they'd had it in there for weeks. And I tell you what, at that time, I could not have hated them more, because I hated everybody as well. That's the thing. You don't think that the dietitian or the doctor is trying to help you. You just think, just let me live my life. It's my life. Obviously, they're trying to help you, but I just felt as though they were a hindrance, and I didn't deserve to live, and to just leave me alone, basically. And then the deceit of my mum and dad having that in the back of the car, I think that was why I was in such a bad state when I did get hospitalised, because I just felt so deceived, I guess, because I didn't think it would happen to me. I honestly didn't. I didn't think I would be taken in.
Yeah, and it just shows how much of a grip, that illness and obsession has, like, especially your age, being a 12-year-old, and then even being admitted to the hospital, not necessarily changing your behavior or making you realize that the people, around you are trying to help you. And then from a parent's perspective, that must be so scary for them. And, you alluded to it in the beginning that your dad even still has a hard time talking about it. And I can imagine what it's like when there's a support system around you that's just trying to not just help you, but essentially save your life. And you're still not able to see that they're trying to help you, and essentially still going through the same motions that, are hurting you and got you in the hospital in the first place. And that's really scary to think about.
Yeah, and it's not only, so obviously the whole me having anorexia was sort of soul destroying for them, and it was a horrific time, but it was then what followed from that. So like we've said, it's not a lifestyle, and like I'll move on to what happened to me whilst I was in hospital to sort of reiterate it is not a lifestyle. I was literally days away from dying. I used to have people come in the room and pray. My family came over from France to say goodbye, and it was literally a matter of days that I was away from dying, ultimately, because I was starving to death. And I would have bed sores because my bones were just sticking out. You get bed sores anyway, because I was in hospital for 2 months, but you get bed sores even if you're a healthy weight, let alone when your coccyx bone is sticking into a hospital bed. Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
So, I was hospitalized, and then they tried to make me eat, and I didn't. And then they said they're going to have to put the tube in. So I guess you know what one of the tubes are that goes through your nose, down your throat, and into your stomach.
A feeding tube, essentially?
Yeah.
So
It's a force feed.
Can you kind of explain why, like, even being hospitalized, I'm assuming they're having conversations with you, and you kind of have to know in your head, like, okay, this has gotten pretty bad right now. I'm in the hospital for 2 months, and you're still kind of refusing to eat. What?
I wasn't in the hospital for 2 months before the tube was in.
Oh, gotcha.
Like a couple of days. But I just did not. I just thought they were overreacting. Honestly, I really didn't understand, because it is such a horrible illness which takes over your mind, and you just can't think logically at all. I thought everybody was against me, and then therefore I hated them, because I just thought, what are you doing? Like, why don't you just let me go home? Like, and I didn't want to live. And when I was reading my hospital notes, it did say something along the lines of, Beth said to the staff today that she didn't deserve to live. She wanted to spend her last months at home, and if they made her over 5 stone, then she'd be fat, and she didn't want that. Something along those lines, which is just, now I look back, it's like a completely different person. But I can't explain it, but it's just a disease where it makes you not see things for how they really are. Like, I wouldn't have looked in the mirror and thought, oh, you're looking a bit skinny, because I didn't even really look in the mirror. It wasn't about how I looked at all.
Wow. And did they eventually get the tube in? And I guess what, at its worst, how did this begin to, affect you and your body?
So they put the tube in, and but they did that when I was asleep. So I do, because I was sedated for quite a lot of it, but not like fully sedated. It was just sort of, it's all like a bit of a blur, because I would kick off and things like that. They went to put the tube in me when I was sleeping, and I think I had tramadol, but I was still able to, if somebody was on top of me, I knew that they were there, sort of thing, like not fully unconscious. And then, I just sort of remember like a nurse being on top of me, like I didn't know what she was trying to do. And then I woke up the next day and I couldn't move from my waist down, and basically my body, because I'd been trying to fight and I was so small, my body gave in, and I then was unable to walk from my waist down. I just couldn't move a thing. I could feel, but I couldn't move them, if that makes sense.
Wow. And that's just because you were just malnourished and you were expending too much energy, sort of fighting back?
Yeah, my body just gave in because I was ultimately just a skeleton, I guess, and couldn't get. They were going to get this tube in me, and I just couldn't. I obviously just gave in, and then so when I woke up the next day, I tried to be like, what the hell has just happened to me? But I couldn't talk because the tube that they'd put in, they didn't have, there was one, I think they wanted to put like this silk one in. So it was obviously like a little bit softer, but with the one that they put in, it was like slightly too big for my throat. And then there was like a split on the top and the bottom. So I couldn't talk. So I had to write on like a whiteboard to like my family, and even then I was just begging for them to get me out, but so I couldn't talk and I couldn't move the bottom half of me. So that was obviously extremely traumatic, but it was also traumatic for my parents too, because they're there thinking, oh my god, we've done this to her, but we've allowed it to happen. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It needed to happen.
And you said you were there for 2 months. Like how many days of that 2 months did you spend on the feeding tube?
Oh, the whole 2 months. So when I was discharged with the tube, but so basically I had that happened, and then they were putting, I don't know, I think it worked out about like a whole day's worth of calories in, like whilst I was sleeping and things like that. And they, well, probably more than that, to be honest, just to try and make me put on weight. But then I started getting pains in like my arms and my legs. And they had to do, so I basically got refeeding syndrome. So that was because my body was so used to not having food. Then when you've got the food going into your body, it's a shock. So your body just doesn't know how to react to that. And then I think it was from that I got bone marrow suppression. So I had to have like a bone marrow transplant. Then I got water on my lungs as well, and had to literally like sit up for days to basically drain these from my lungs. Had a hole in my heart valve because my heart was trying to pump so hard. And then the worst part that I got septicemia. So again, because my body was so malnourished and it couldn't fight off any infection, then I think it was through a cannula that the infection got in there. And I was in absolute agony, and they thought it might have been meningitis, but then it wasn't meningitis. So it was actually, I personally think they left it for quite a few days too many. But when they realized that it was sepsis, I had to get rushed down the same day to have like emergency surgery on my left leg. So I've got like a 5-inch scar on that leg. So they had to drain it all out. And then I had, then they found more. So then I've got like another scar on like my right leg, one on my right arm, and then one just sort of like under my left bum cheek. I've got one there. So I think it was like 4 operations in total, and then like 2 drainages as well, something like that.
I just have to say, like, it's so hard to hear this, first of all, but it's so powerful to hear it too, because it's this like connection of the dots where, you know, it feels like, well, literally just a few minutes ago, you know, you kind of began this story of, I'm 12, my dance teacher tells me, get in shape a little bit, you know, and then you start counting calories, you start walking more. Like for this to unravel into what you're talking about now, it feels like it just happened so suddenly. And I'm sure that's what it was like for you. And it's, just, I think goes to show like these small warning signs, these small habits, obsessions, these things that start out that, people kind of brush off, or friends of people, or, support systems of people just, kind of brush off because maybe it's not that bad. It just really goes to show what these can accumulate into, and how serious it can become so quickly, and just kind of out of nowhere, and how it all piles up. And it's just, it's just crazy, hearing this story, because we were just there. We were just, you're just 12-year-old counting calories. Now you're in the hospital with 4 surgeries, a feeding tube, and your family visiting you to basically say goodbye to you because you might not make it. And it's just crazy how we got from point A to point B so quickly, and just how this happens, and in real life to so many people, and it's just really hard to hear that it can go that way.
Yeah, so that's literally in a matter of 2 months, and it just started from me not having enough calories. But I think that's why I wanted to come on here, was because like you said about the pro anorexia podcast and it being a lifestyle choice, I obviously don't agree with that, but also the person that spoke said something about how like she was put on like Weight Watchers at 7 or something like that, and that is exactly the same in terms of it's a young age, you're vulnerable, as a trigger, something will start it, and you have to be careful. This was also before like proper social media was around. There wasn't like Instagram, or I think there was like Bebo and MSN, but that was about it really. So I can completely see and understand why this is only getting worse. Whereas this was just from like magazines, I used to read a few magazines.
Yeah, that is truly the scary thing, and what I was thinking in the back of my mind. And I know Joe was thinking it, because I know like Joe's relationship with social media too, and some of the views he has is that makes it so scary. Like when I go on TikTok, which isn't that much, I get terrified about bringing a child into the world. Like I have to be honest, and it's really scary, to think about how this could potentially just only get worse, because of social media and everything that's out there.
Yeah, for sure. It's it's awful. Like that was another thing that I sort of remember, like when I would do like exercises in my room and things like that. I remember having like a magazine cut out, and that was like on the inside of my door, and it was like a diet breakdown, and then it was like certain exercises, so I'd like make sure I would do them per day, and like that was in a not a kids magazine, but like a teen magazine, and like I can't remember what magazine it was, but that didn't help. That did not help at all. That sort of thing should not be in there. Probably like how to get a summer body in like 30 days or something ridiculous like that. Right. But when somebody is so vulnerable and they do have such a bad eating disorder, oh my god, it's so damaging, so damaging. But yeah, so I got out when I was discharged, which I think is quite a small amount to be fair, but when I was discharged I was 2 seconds, I think it was 5 and a bit stone. So what's that? Yeah, five and a bit stone, which I personally don't think, now I look back, I'm like...
About 70 pounds, it looks like.
So 70 pounds, which is... So it was basically 10 pounds higher than my lowest weight. So I was discharged, and so that was, I think it was about July time. So yeah, May, June, July. Yeah, so July. So I was there for 2 months, and then when I got out, I had to have like a Zimmer frame because I had to learn to walk again, because obviously I couldn't move my legs, and then had to have all those operations as well. I remember I couldn't put my feet down. Like it would just be like I was on tippy toes. So I just had to learn gradually through like physiotherapy and hydrotherapy how to like move my legs properly again. So yeah, when I got out, I was like, a 12-year-old with a walking stick and a Zimmer frame, and then had to just go to weekly therapy sessions to help that. And I can now, like I can, it's amazing. I sometimes get a bit, I don't really run very often, but I go through my stages of like when I'll be enjoying running again or whatever, and I sometimes like tear up a little bit, like, wow, I can't believe that I can do this, because I literally never thought I was going to be able to walk again. I thought I was just going to be, well, at one point I just thought I was going to be in a wheelchair forever. So it's absolutely incredible, the human body, but it did take a lot of work and it was so painful as well. But we got there anyway, and I went back to school again, which shocked me when I read it. Was I went back to school in September, so I was in year 9. I didn't go back full time, but I went back with a tube and everything, so everybody knew about it. It wasn't exactly, it was obvious that there was something wrong with me because I had this tube and this sticker on my face, but I still had to have night feeds. So even though I was discharged from hospital, I'd get connected up like every night to have, like, I think this was when it was a day's worth of calories put into your body overnight whilst you're sleeping. So you eat and then you obviously have the extra calories overnight, so just to make sure you're gaining weight.
Wow. So I mean, when you got out, like, what was your diet sort of like? Did they put you on a specific thing? And obviously you had the feeder in, but is there any other, like, how many calories were you supposed to be taking in? Were you like, was the goal to progressively gain a certain amount of weight every single week?
No, it wasn't like a specific amount of weight, but if I'm honest, I think septicemia, having that and like knowing that that was the time that I thought, you know what, this has gone too far, sort of thing. Like, after, it sounds awful, but like nothing was bad enough to make me realize. And I think there was one day where it just sort of clicked in my head a little bit, and I just said to my mum, can you get me some jelly? And she was just like, yeah, of course. Went and got that, and then I just started like eating small amounts. I would never have eaten like a bag of crisps or anything like that, but I would have small amounts of things which sort of didn't contain much fat, but that was where I sort of started getting a little bit better. But then when I was discharged, that was when sort of things went downhill at home, and I was, honestly, it pains me to say it, but I was just getting violent and things like that. We had to go to therapy, and I just wasn't well mentally, so I was put on olanzapine, which is an antipsychotic drug. So it's for like unusual, disturbed thinking, and bipolar and schizophrenic people usually have it. So that's just a sort of, to demonstrate the bad mindset I was in. And I would be abusive. My parents would have to restrain me. But I don't remember this, really. I don't remember much of it, because I didn't think that suppression was a thing, really, until I read through my notes with a couple of my friends the other day, and I was absolutely shocked at how it was like a completely different person. And I can't believe that it made me feel guilty, for putting my family through that. But and then,
well, to come out of that, I mean, what was the, I guess, change mentally, or how did you begin to, the journey to pull yourself out of that, to eventually get to the stage where you are now, where literally, we're here talking about this on the show today?
Oh God, it's really hard to say. It's not like there was a certain point, but I think it was just me realizing that life was sort of worth living, and I wasn't having a life. I was a child, and I wasn't having a childhood. So I think as I was like slightly putting on weight, I was realizing that I was stronger and I felt better in myself. And don't get me wrong, there were days where I I wanted it all to end, and I would struggle and I would feel guilty after eating. But if I'm honest, I just felt as though I was sort of getting stronger in my mind. And again, this is how like I have explained it to people before, but with anorexia, it's when you're anorexic, the voice in your head is stronger than you are. Whereas now it's still there. I still have an eating disorder. I know that, but I am stronger than it, if that makes sense. So I don't like, I'll still know like what I've eaten every day, but I don't track calories. I don't let it define me. Whereas before, the guilt and the shame would overcome my brain. Whereas now I know that it's a voice. I know that it's not right. So I'm able to, it doesn't overpower my brain. My more positive thoughts overpower my brain, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense, and it's amazing to hear. And is it sort of, a journey of, I think something mainstream that a lot of people kind of have an understanding of the recovery aspect is like alcoholism is, is it just you kind of going through day by day, making sure there's no relapse, I guess, for lack of a better term, and just, continuing to, kind of get stronger. And like you said, understanding, I guess, or being able to admit, like, I had this problem, or I still do have this problem. Now it's just a matter of controlling it.
Yeah, well, I did have a bit of a relapse. So I've only ever had one relapse. And that wasn't to the point where I was hospitalized, but it was when I was doing my GCSEs, and I think stress can sometimes be a bit of a trigger for some people, and I think like looking back, that probably was a bit of a trigger for me. But it didn't get to the stage of where it was before. It was more like my boyfriend at the time was just like, "You're worrying me, you've lost a lot of weight," sort of thing. And if I'm honest, I can't really remember how I sort of got back on track with that. But then with me, when I've said about like the antipsychotic drug and stuff, like that stopped obviously at some point, but then there was a point where I was just I got really, really low. So I've been on antidepressants for so again, this is all because of anorexia, which somebody calls a lifestyle. And yeah, I've been on them for years. Sometimes I have to like up my dose. It depends on how I am. But there was a time when I was an absolute mess. Like when I think I was about between 18 and 22. I was off the rails in terms of going out, like just drinking, doing drugs, things like that. And if I'm honest, I think it's partly because anorexia stole my childhood. I was then I had a boyfriend, but then we finished. Everybody at school who I was friends with, they started going to like sixth form and different colleges and things like that, and I just did not know how to cope on my own. And because then I was like, oh my god, I'm actually an adult. Oh, I can go out and I think, if I'm honest, I don't think I've actually ever said this to anybody, but I think the reason why I would get so drunk and things was because I would like drink vodka straight, and in the back of my head it would be because I know that's I'm not going to go and drink loads of beer because it's got loads of calories in. Do you know what I mean? It would be like, I'd do it on like an empty stomach because I knew that I'd be drinking. So it would sort of be like a substitute, I guess. But then I would have no clue what happened. For like years. So
it sounds like it's very much, a big part of your life. I mean, and you also described how, you kind of have a better grip on it, like mentally, but physically, where are you kind of at right now? Like, are you at a healthier weight, or is it something that you're still kind of struggling with to this day?
No, I'm not. I mean, I don't think I'm ever going to be happy with my body. I'm not going to be somebody that like loves their body. But I'm a size 10. I don't know what that equivalent is. It's a sort of, I'm a healthy weight. I don't know what weight I am, but that's because ever since I got discharge from the hospital, even when I would go and have to have reviews, I wouldn't let them weigh me. But then I haven't weighed myself since, because I don't want to know, because I'm worried that will be a trigger. So I don't weigh myself, but like, I obviously know that I know if I've put on weight because my clothes feel a little bit tighter or whatever, or if I've like lost a little bit of weight, but it's never anything drastic. But yeah, I'm completely healthy. The scar on my left leg, which is my biggest one, does give me some like jip sometimes, because it's not a very neat scar, whereas like the one on my right leg, because that was sort of more planned, because they knew that I had more sepsis in my body, whereas this was right, you need to go down now to theatre. It's not very neat, and it's sort of, I can feel like the nerves aren't right in it. Like no one can touch it. Even I can't touch it. It feels horrible because all the tendons and stuff aren't right. But like the one on my right leg is absolutely fine. And yeah, like I said, I'm able to run, walk. I've got a full-time job. I've got a long-term partner. So I don't know. That's another reason why I wanted to talk to you guys, is because I want people to know if they are going through it, they can. There is a way to get over it. That you just need to make sure that you allow people to help you, and there is a way out. You can have a normal life without it being centered around food completely, because that's what I never thought I'd be able to do, have a normal life without it just being, oh my God, how many calories is in that? When am I going to exercise? Things like that. But yeah, I now have sustained a job, a relationship, and I'm healthy.
Yeah, and to hear that after hearing what we just heard about what your body was put through, I mean, literally to the edge, like, yeah, death around the corner. It absolutely is. And then, even in this environment, to hear that of, where you are, and not having any of those relapses recently, and still being stronger than that voice in your head. Because, I think it's even more so than ever now, there probably would be triggers all around, right? Like we talked about social media, but, we also now live in a society where people keep a tracker on their wrist of, steps that they need to get. And that kind of goal setting that, I really do think can get dangerous when people are, kind of constantly tracking those things or needing to do better. And then their lives start to revolve around things like how many steps or beating another goal. And, there's so many examples of that, which, I assume could be triggering. But, again, to hear, where you are and based on where you came from is amazing. And, I think just so important to just hear that story play out, because something like this, what I'm gathering is the downward spiral can be so fast. And like you said, it went from starting to count calories to in the hospital about to die with a tube down your throat. And that can be so fast, but the recovery aspect is a long journey, and one that, you're clearly still on. I think it's just important for people to kind of hear that, full story, and that ongoing journey that you're on of just, how much this can, affect your life in so many different ways, and will affect your life, for the rest of your life.
Yeah, and I think it is such a shame that everything now is so focused on how you look, and basically happiness. People aren't happy unless they look a certain way. And I think that there was I guess naturally, being a 20 whatever female, there's obviously bits of me where I'm like, oh, okay, maybe I'll get my eyebrows microbladed or whatever, but it's not to the point where it takes over completely, which it did at one point. And to put it into to perspective, there was something again in my records that one of the doctors wrote, and it was how one of my mum's friends overheard somebody when I was at the dance show, this dance show that I was doing, and they referred to me as something from Belsen, and I had to Google that. I didn't know what that was, but it's a Nazi concentration camp.
Oh, geez.
So, yeah, you can imagine the state I was in, basically. But yeah, you would never know now. Like a lot of my friends who I didn't know back then, they were shocked when I told them. I do just look as normal as can be for a 27-year-old girl, basically.
Wow. I mean, it's incredible to hear. We're obviously very happy to hear, this journey, and like obviously sorry that this had happened to you at such a young age, but it's just like, I think a very powerful and important story for people to hear, to be in the state that you were in and kind of just, work your way through it, and to now be able to share that story, I think is, super powerful. And you had said multiple times that, you kind of just wanted to tell your story, that, hopefully, someone out there who's struggling with this is, can hear it and have some sort of like hope. So yeah, we just really appreciate you, coming on and sharing, because I'm sure that, it's going to help at least one person.
Yeah. And to me, it sort of makes that all worth it if I can help just one person. Is there anything that you want to ask me which I haven't covered? Because I was a bit nervous, so I might have not covered some things that you want me to speak about, or is there anything that you were like, oh, maybe we can't ask that because I don't mind?
No, I think you did an amazing job telling the story, and really just if there's anything that you want to leave listeners with directly, any message to anyone listening that might be going through something similar, that might realize maybe even early warning signs, or that maybe their relationship with food, with exercise or something may not actually be a healthy one, and any message that you want to leave them with.
Yeah, I think recognizing that one thing I did was I became a bit of a recluse, and I remember even saying, like, I don't need anybody but my family. I don't want to spend any time with friends, anything like that. So that is definitely a warning sign, and feeling as though, yeah, I guess that each day you want to try and have less calorie. Well, even knowing what calories are in what food, I think that's a massive warning sign as well, because I know it's on in the UK, it's on every, see, this is, I think it's awful, but it's on every single piece of food now. We've just got the calories written down, so on every piece of packaging. So it is sort of hard to not know what is in what. Even on a menu now, we've got that written down. So yeah, just to try and not pay, I know it's hard, but try not to pay too much attention to the calories that are in food, because if you feel like you're becoming obsessive in terms of exercise and calories, then this is when, I know it's hard, but you do need to seek help, or don't push your family away as well. That's another thing. Like when I got to the really bad stage, I didn't want anything to do with them. I wouldn't take any advice. So I just think it's really important to have a really supportive peer group, I guess, and just to try and speak to someone about it. It's not embarrassing. It's an illness, and just like having a cold, if you don't feel very well, you tell somebody. So if this is obviously way more severe than a cold, I'm not saying that, but yeah, just try and speak to somebody, and there is light at the end of the tunnel. You can have a normal life, because when I was anorexic, well, when I was going through the mist of anorexia, it wasn't a life. It was barely living, to be honest. So yeah, I think that's...
Well, we really appreciate it. Like I said, I think this is going to definitely help somebody. And, this is one of those topics that, I even told Greg, I was like, I can't believe we haven't talked about this before. And I think it's because usually when it comes to these topics, we wait for the right person and the right story. And I think this was absolutely the right one to, be where you are now, and to come from where you came from, is huge. And just thank you for coming on and sharing your story.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I think it's just important to know that anorexia it isn't just about losing a little bit of weight. It's everything that comes from that, and your body being so malnourished. There are so many things that can happen to you, and ultimately death. So I'm sort of thankful, like I said, that I did get septicemia, because it gave me that kick up the arse that I needed, that I am really, really unwell. But having anorexia is such a savage disease. And yeah, I'm just hope that it has sort of shown some people who do think it's a lifestyle that it's not a lifestyle, it's not living at all.
Yeah, no, it absolutely did. And I think it, even helped clear up a lot of misconceptions around, what it is and what a person, kind of goes through that has this, because unfortunately, I think a lot of people still do think that there's maybe more of a choice behind it, or that it is constantly kind of like looking in the mirror. And I think, kind of explaining everything in detail just really kind of helps brush that aside and give a kind of full picture and understanding. So yeah, thank you so much. We're really happy to hear that, you're in a good place, and keep in touch. And, we want to know how everything's going with you in the future as well.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for having me, both of you. I really appreciate it.
Thanks.
No problem. Have a good one.
And you. See you later. Bye.
Yeah, man. So I feel like that's a really important episode. Full disclosure, I mean, I said it like 3 times already, but like literally, I remember when it was on the calendar being like, I can't believe we haven't talked about this before, because when you think of this show, you think, the range that we've had already through 12 seasons, that anorexia would have popped up, because, I think it's pretty prevalent in, especially in, nowadays, a lot of people struggle with body dysmorphia, or they just have something that they don't enjoy about their body, and, it's not good. But yeah, so I mean, I'm glad, that she came on and kind of talked to us. And like, I think the story was just very powerful to hear that someone can be 60 pounds and basically on their deathbed and work their way back to, being healthy at a healthy weight again, and overcoming the mental aspect of anorexia as well, because I think people forget about that part. It's not just like the weight, it's the, mentality and the psychology behind what is happening too. That's like really big.
Yeah, no, totally. And, 12 years old, like that's what's really sticking with me, of just how much of a grip, this can have on someone, a child essentially. And yeah, I think it just really paints a picture of, the relationship that, we all kind of have with things like exercise, with food, with calories. Like it really is such a fine line, in just kind of the world we live in. Like she said, it's just, now you can't not see calories on anything. And like, don't get me wrong, there's positive to all these things. Fitbit, Step, like there's motivating qualities, I think, that are important to push people to live a healthy lifestyle. And this is great. And technology helps with that. And more information about ingredients and what's actually healthy helps with that. But we can't deny that there's a danger zone that these things can push people into, where like I'm guilty of it myself, like with working out too, and injuring myself, or going too far, or, just mentally needing to do more, be better, kind of keeping this track record, like for no one else, like just yourself. And it can just truly get obsessive. And, I think that's really dangerous. And, it's hard to find that balance, but, if you're able to kind of make that shift of like, I just want to have a healthy relationships with these things, because it's like anything. It's like, I'm scrolling through my phone too much, I'm on Instagram too much, or I'm drinking too much, or I'm whatever. Like, just because these things are labeled as healthy, like, eat, diet, and exercise, doesn't mean that they can't be dangerous as well. And I just think her story and some of the triggers that kind of pushed her through, her experience with anorexia, just kind of really brings to light that, full spectrum of needing to just kind of constantly be aware of all these things. Because like I said, it's scary how quickly starting to count calories can turn into her position, near death in a hospital, completely changing, her young adulthood, growing up, the psychological impact of all of that, and now the life that she has to live, essentially, making sure that she doesn't have a relapse or she doesn't get triggered. It's crazy to hear how something so small can get so big in this case.
Yeah, and I think it's important, like what you said is important to note too, that like even healthy things can be abused. Like anything can be abused. If you get addicted to like running and you're just running so much to the point where you're injuring yourself and you're still out there running because, whatever. And it's like, well, this is a healthy thing. People are supposed to exercise. They're supposed to, this and that. But everything in some sort of moderation. Like obviously there's a healthy amount of everything in the world. And there's a reason for that. Like anything can sort of be abused in that way. So it's important to try and find the healthy balances in these things if you can, because you don't want it to be, you want to be overcome by these things. And not saying that, you have the ability, like I'm not too familiar with anorexia, but I don't imagine that it is something that you could just like, you can't just, like walk into anorexia. I do believe that it is a real disease that, affects people. But it, as much as you can to kind of try to make sure that you're being real with yourself and like knowing when, you're overdoing it or this and that, otherwise you can end up in a situation sort of similar to this, even if you don't deal with like the psychological kind of grip that anorexia has over some people. Yeah,
it's a crazy story, but glad we got to speak to her. And like we said in the beginning, glad we got to, talk with this guest in particular because of the episode that we did way in the past of speaking to someone who is pro anorexia, which is just it's just insane to think about. And again, one of the craziest conversations we had, because there is a community out there that believes in that. Wild, but glad we got to do this one and hear her story and journey.
Yeah. For anyone out there, like I said earlier, if you want to be a part of the show, don't hesitate to reach out to us. Go to our website, oplshow.com, or send us an email directly at oplpodcast@gmail.com.
Follow us on Instagram at OPL Podcast. And if you want to be a patron of the show and get access to all those bonus episodes and our charity arm helping other people, then you can go to patreon.com/OPL show and check that out and leave a rating, review, subscribe, comment, and that's all.
Yep, that was all. See you guys next time.